Connie Willis, the podcast. Taking you into new ways of thinking, even providing answers to questions you've often pondered. Connie Willis, the podcast. This is a Connie Willis exclusive. Whistleblower. What you're about to hear has never been heard anywhere else. This is Connie Willis, the podcast.
Connie Willis here with an exclusive, talking with private military, government contractor, and U.S. Navy Special Warfare veteran, Robert Treat. This is where I asked Robert about needing help with his pets, 2 huskies and a pit bull, during his operation.
It's just one of those things that's associated with surgeries that are often taken for granted. I'm alone in the world. I don't have any family or, close friends. So even though the VA is taking care of my surgery, there's all the things that go with it that you normally have a support system for, which I don't have. Like how is the house payment going to be made? I can't work. Who's going to feed the dogs? Who's going to make sure, that things are okay? And so those are all the things. That's the reason for the GoFundMe was all those little ancillary things that I have to prearrange. If I'm going to be in the hospital for 6 months, I need my house payment, paid up 6 months before I go, or I'll come back and there won't be any home.
Don't forget to check out the GoFundMe link for Robert in the description. This is where I asked Robert about his dad, his adopted dad.
When it comes to my adopted dad, there's no doubt that my biological father was, some sort of spook, most certainly, being the way he was treated and how they didn't refer to each other by names, and that he spoke with, what she said was a British or Australian accent in, Texas in the 60s. So he was obviously some sort of spook, possibly even one of the, men in black,
At this point, I asked Robert if he would clarify what a spook was.
Oh, intelligence, like a MI6 or, CIA or one of those things. If he was British, most likely MI6. I don't really know what predated Five Eyes back then, but the whole intel community's been incestuous ever since World War II.
This is where I asked Robert about his experiences with the Greys.
My first experience with what people call the Greys, about the first 5 minutes or so was absolutely terrifying. But I don't know if it was just me or because of what I'd already been through, the traveling or the nature of my birth, or I quickly relaxed with them, and the whole dynamic of the encounter changed when I changed. And this kind of connects back to my adopted father. I've always thought it was weird. Who pays $10,000 for a baby? You could almost buy a house for that in 1969. That's a lot of money. I've actually been more curious about what my biological mother spent the money on. Like, if I sold one of my dogs, right, which I would never sell, but if I did do something like that, what on earth could I ever spend the money on that I could have a good conscience with? I don't want to ask. I think she probably spent it on alcohol and a car. And I have never asked her that question because I know it would just make me mad. She lives about 30 minutes from me. We don't have a relationship. We don't talk. But I actually, that's why I moved to Texas, was, thinking that, my brother had been murdered, so I was her last male child. And I moved to Texas to be with my biological family, and it didn't turn out the way I thought it would turn out. And the reason I tracked her down was I launched a huge investigation that took a couple of years, trying to find her, because I was 30 years old, and I thought, I'm getting a little older. It's time I found out if I have any genetic time bombs I need to. And when you go to the doctor, you fill out those forms and ask for your family medical history. Like, is there a history of heart attack or cancer. I didn't know. So I was like, well, I better find out. So I tracked her down and sent her a letter, and she sent me a letter back. And, we talked. And then on my 40th birthday, my brother was murdered. And that's when I decided to come out to Texas. And that was 2010 when I finally came out here. And, I kind of thought, because I had, other siblings, sisters. I still had 3 sisters. And, aunts and uncles and grandparents. And I thought, oh, hey, the prodigal son comes home. Everybody's going to be happy to have me back. No. In fact, one of my siblings said, their response was, what did that dumbass have to come back for? Probably because I was the product of an affair. You can't have the little bugger around. The husband probably wouldn't like that. But she tried, when I met her, found her, she tried to tell me that my father was this guy, Barton Menard, who was a full-blooded Cherokee, owns a big plumbing company here. And I found him too. He was deceased, but I found his son. And this is what led to the DNA test. Because he was full-blooded Cherokee, and I was like, well, if I prove that I'm Cherokee, then I can get on, the tribal rolls, and I would have an identity. I'm part of a tribe, right? Being adopted, you grow up without an identity, without feeling like you belong. And I thought, oh, I'm Cherokee, yada yada. I'll have a tribe, and I'll be a part of something. And that is not at all what my DNA test came back with. And I had to go back to my birth mother and say, look, the person you told me was my father is not my father. She's like, yes, yeah. I'm like, no, he's not. Here's the DNA test. There's not a drop of Cherokee in me. So maybe you need to check your sign-in book or whatever, who you were with that month. Oh, I was not polite about it. And she said, well, the only other guy that I was with, and then she told me about, the men at the club, those 6 guys, and how she did have an affair with one of them. And when she said, the British accent, that jives with my DNA test. She knew nothing about him. Just that he would arrive with these other gentlemen, and when they came in, everybody had to leave, and the people who did stay, who were allowed to stay, very much kowtowed to them. They were something. They were something important, but she didn't know what. I tried to do some research into the name of the club, which was called Sir Walter's.
This is a Connie Willis exclusive on Connie Willis, the podcast.
Well, the schools that I went to were, they had a different curriculum. It was a lot more challenging and made accommodations for, smart kids. Like, you started school when you tested high enough to enter. Right, so like the basic preliminary things of, being able to write your own name and your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s, to enter first grade. Like here in America, you enter first grade when you're 6. That's an age limit. But, when I started school was in Tehran, and you enter school when you can complete the basics. So I started first grade when I was 3 years old. So by the time we moved to America, I was already really technically ready to graduate. But they held me back, and that was a catastrophic moment for me, was being forced back into 8th grade when I should have been a junior in high school. That they thought it was better for me to be with kids my own age, and that was absolutely the wrong decision. Yeah, I was very upset about being held back, and I made that known. Like I was like, no, I object to this. I want to be in high school and get my education over with so I can go on to college. And they gave me my curriculum. I'm like, math class? Like, seriously? Like, I should be in calc. Yeah, I had this years ago. I don't need this. An English class, I'm like, don't you people know how to speak English already? Like, what is the point of this? So from the time we moved to America, I was always in trouble, always in the principal's office, always getting swats. Our principals had this big paddle, and you call them swats. And the first time I got swats was English class, because I still spelled my words like color, C-O-L-O-U-R, the British spelling. Because in the 70s, right, we learned the Queen's English, not this whatever they speak here, right? So I was always arguing with my teacher. She's like, "That's not how you spell it." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And she goes, "Well, that's not how we spell it in America." I'm like, "Then why don't you call it American class?" Off to the office. On my 17th birthday, my father informed me that for my 18th birthday, he was going to throw me out of the house. And I'm like, that's in the middle of my senior year. There's not even any point to this. If I can't even graduate, then let's just call it quits right now. Yeah, I went right into the military, and then what followed there made college redundant. I went back and got my GED. The only drawback is I don't have any certification or credentials that, help me translate that into the civilian life I lead now. Even though I know things, I know how to do things, I don't have a certificate that says I know how to do it.
What you just heard has never been heard anywhere else. This is Connie Willis, the podcast. Informant. Learn more about Connie, her guests, and be sure to join her private membership shows, Blue Rock Talk and Connie After Dark, at ConnieWillis.com. Whistleblower.